Hello crafters. In this video I'm going to show you a few tips on how to sew on your cardstock using your sewing machine, but most importantly how to sew straight. Um, so I have my sewing machine set up already here. It's already set up to sew as a zigzag pattern, and in case you're wondering, the width of my stitch it's all the way up to 6. But of course this is something that you'll have to look at your machine and play around with the different stitches and see what you like or what it will go with your project. I'm going to use white thread and black cardstock, so it's easy to view. But of course for your project you are going to use the color that goes along with your project. Apologies for the glare. Um, it's a metal platform here, and I need a light. So it's going to be a little bit of a glare, but I will try and make sure that everything is nice and visible. Before I go ahead, this is what I would like you to do. Prepare two chipboard pieces. I have very thin, I think it's 0.30 chipboard, so I put like 3 layers of it. But if you have medium chipboard, which is like 0.50, you should be fine. And what I did, I cut the whole strip at the 12 inches by 1 inch and a quarter. And what I did, and you know what, in order to let me take the foot out so you can see what I did. I put my 12 inch strip of chipboard, and I looked at the measurement from where these holes for the dog feet start, okay, all the way to the end of the platform of the machine. And then I made a tick mark with a pencil, and then I cut it on the tick mark, and I got this. So see how this one runs from the dog feet here all the way to the end of the platform. And I did the same piece in the back, so I took the same 12 inch. I mean, it's going to be shorter now once you cut this piece. This is going to be shorter than 12 inch, of course. And I went in the back and I did the same thing. I put it exactly where uh, the place for the dog feet start or end, all the way down to the end of the platform, and I cut that piece too. So this is how I came up with these two pieces. Now I'm going to put my sewing foot back on. Okay. So before, oh, and also on the back, I put like a 1/4 inch strips on the cut edges, and we're going to set this on the side. Before we go ahead to actually sewing on your project, I would advise you cut yourself some strips of the same cardstock you are going to sew on, for testing to make sure that the cardstock is strong enough, because when you are going to start sewing you are going to make holes in the cardstock, right, perforations, and depending on the quality of the cardstock, some cardstock may not take that perforation and it will start to tear what you are actually sewing. What I'm using here is actually a black cardstock Maker Basics from Paper Phenomenon, 80 pound. So this is what I'm using, and it goes amazing with sewing on it. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to place my cardstock under the foot, of course, and this is a tip to give you. Before you lower your shank, always make sure that the needle is in the cardstock. This will prevent, some of you may get this thread to buckle up here. You don't want that to happen. And normally this is what I do. So while the foot is still up, I lower the needle in the material I'm going to sew. Okay, I make sure that I pull on these threads a little bit to straighten them out, and then I lower the foot. And now using your hand on the wheel, start sewing, just using your head, not the electric foot. to make sure you get to the um, that you are going to have exactly the desired distance between the cut edge of your cardstock and where the design starts. If you make it too close, this will start tearing down. So you will need at least 1/8 of an inch, okay? And once you're happy with that distance, then I'll show you what to do next. So what I'm going to do now to make sure, and I'm looking through here, okay? And I'm also, once it fits through the back, I'm going to see what I am with the design on the paper. So let's see. I can tell that it's a little bit too much from the edge, so I'm just shifting the cardstock a little bit to get closer to the edge. And then I straighten it out. And take your time, do it by hand. And then I'm going to look through the back to see if I'm happy with the way the design looks when it's related to the cut edge of the cardstock. Okay, let's see what we have. But maybe for you it's not going to be so visible, but I don't want to, I want my cardstock not to stay like that, not to change position. So I am going to look through this side to see if I'm happy with what I get. So far, this is a little bit too far away from the edge from what I would like. So I'm going to sew a little bit more so I have more of the design coming out. Let's see now. Okay, I think now I'm happy. So once you're happy with the distance between where the stitch here, with the distance like where the stitch it's ending and the cut edge of your cardstock, leave your cardstock in there like that. And what I'd like you to do, take that piece of chipboard that we cut to match the front of your machine. Make sure your cardstock is nice and straight. Remove the double-sided tape. Okay. And now make sure you're going to place this nice and straight along the edge of your cardstock, but making sure, of course, that you are not going to glue it too close to those feet that come out to feed your paper, right, or your material that you are sewing. So usually the rule is if you glue it somewhere at the end of your foot, you should be fine. So if I'm going to glue it like, and of course make sure that it will allow for the foot to lower down. So right now our foot is lowered. So when I glue it, I make sure I attach it from the end of the foot, nice and straight, and press it down. So this will be your guide to allow for your cardstock to fit in straight. I'm going to do the same thing in the back. And from here, it should be a breeze. Okay. If you need to, get out of your chair and go around your sewing machine, do that. I'm not going to do that here. But again, I'm going to make sure that it's glued from the end of the foot. Sorry, this is not going to be so visible in the video. Let me turn the machine a little bit. So I'm going to make sure that when I glue it down, it's going to be glued from the end of the foot right here all the way to the end of the machine. Okay. So let's turn the machine around and to find the position for it. Okay. And I'm going to eyeball it for the back. I'm not going to go around the machine, but you can do that when you're going to place your markers. And done. So I think now I'm happy with the result. This is I can continue on sewing now, and I can continue now on sewing using the pedal. This machine is going to make a little bit of a noise, and let's see what we are getting. One thing to tell you, when especially if you are new at sewing, your tendency will be to watch your needle. Never watch your needle. The needle is going to do the stitch you chose for it to do. When sewing, always look at whatever other things you are using as your point of reference in order to sew straight. So my point of reference is going to be this piece of chibor, right? Which is great because it's not going to allow the cardstock to go in different ways. So what I always make sure, I'm going to watch here to make sure that my cardstock is always, kissing this piece of chibor. The other tendency for people who are new at sewing with a sewing machine is to try and pull from here. You don't have to do that. Those dog feet that come out, this is their role, is to feed the material to the back. So all you have to do is to make sure to keep your project, to make sure it always stays here and it kisses with the with the chipboard. And in the back, when I'm going to put my hand here, I'm not going to pull. I'll just make sure that my cardstock sits against this piece of chipboard so that it doesn't, get a mind of its own and run away from me. So now I'm going to start sewing. Let's see what we got. There you go. If let's say this, you're not, although I honestly don't recommend to have any, and mind you, the camera is a lot zoomed in, so probably for you right now, this distance seems like a lot, but I would not recommend anything closer to the cut edge because then the cardstock will start tearing. Let me see, just out of curiosity, what's the distance here? Um, it is 1/8 of an inch. So that's the best distance between the edge of the cardstock and where your stitch design is, especially if you're doing zigzag. So now let's take a fresh piece of cardstock. So let's pretend that actually this is our project. Okay. So let's say this is the good piece of cardstock. This is our project, right? So I'm going to feed it in. Remember, put your needle in while the foot is still up. Make sure that these threads are nice and straight in the back. I don't pull on them hard. It's just enough to like make them straight, but I'm not pulling. See, my thread doesn't feed when I pull here, right? Then I lower the foot, okay? And now I'm going to continue sewing using the pedal. If you are new and uncomfortable with your machine, you don't have to do it super fast, right? That will come, with more experience. And once again, just like any other scrapbooking tool that we are using, there is also a learning curve, so you have to take that into consideration. Don't get frustrated with your machine. Once you get the hang of it, you're going to love it. So believe me, you are not going to regret. And it requires some testing, but again, use your strips of paper, play around with it, see what other stitches your machine has. It may be that you may like another type of stitch design, or another type of stitch design will go with your project better. So just take your time with your machine. Once you learn it and once you get used to it, you are not going to regret it, believe me. So I'm gonna go slowly. And while I'm watching to make sure, so I wasn't even watching really here because having my hand here, I know it's gonna stay pressed against the guide. I was watching to make sure that once it fits through, it will be against the guide here. So now what I'm going to do is just keep my hand in such a way to make sure it always stays pressed to the guide here. That's all I'm doing. And then as it's finishing, I'm making sure that it stays pressed to the guide here in the back, right? Because you don't have the guide here in front, but I want to make sure that I'm still staying straight through the back. Oops, sorry, just finished that, okay? And look at that. Look how nice and straight it is. You are so going to love it once you get hang of it, and these guides definitely help. You can leave the guides there if you want to, but and you can always reuse them. Usually if I check them off, like some of the glue will remain on the machine, which is easy to clean, right? You just apply new strips in the bag, but once they wear out, just create yourself new guides. There's no big deal. Okay, so let's do, I want to do another piece, but this time I want to turn around, right? Because your project is not just, like going straight and there's that. You want to go all the way around the piece. So I'm going to do the same. I'm going to press it against my guide and feed it through slowly until I see it's already under the needle. I'm going to put my needle down, straighten these threads a little bit, lower the foot, and now I'm going to sew. And I'm going to be careful when I get to the end of the cardstock here because I need to make the turn. Okay, so let's do that now. So now I'm switching because I'm about to end my cardstock here. I don't want it to go wonky when I have no guide, so I'm just putting my hand here to make sure it sits against this guide in the back. I'm not pulling or anything. Those dog feet are feeding the machine. And if you are too afraid if you are going to go too fast and miss the corner, just hold the cardstock in place with your hand and roll the wheel by hand. And I think I'm close to the edge. So what I'm going to do now, I am not going to, I'm going to make sure that the needle is inside the material, it's all the way down. I'm just going to leave the foot and I'm going to turn this around. That's all I'm going to do. Lower it. I'm going to give it a few, I think I went a little bit too down. Yes, I did. And I can tell because the edge of my cardstock is not so close um, to the chipboard, right? So what I'm going to do for a second, I'm going to take the needle out of the material, leave the foot, and just press my cardstock to make sure it comes here close to the edge of my chipboard. And because this is a very short edge, I would rather do it by hand until I get to the other end and turn around. I'm going to stop there. I'm going to, the needle is inside the cardstock. I'm going to lift, I'm going to turn, and I can see that I lifted a little bit too early. That's okay. I can go back now, lower the foot again, and give it one more pass with the needle. Again, I'm leaving the needle in, I'm turning, I'm lifting the foot up, turning the cardstock around, and now, of course, we are a little bit too far away. So at this point, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the needle all the way outside the cardstock. Make sure you don't go up or down, just make sure you are bringing the cardstock to press against your chipboard. That's all I did. Make a few passes by hand. And now I'm ready to actually use the foot. And what I'm looking here, and then I'm going to look in the back to make sure that when it feeds, it's kissing this piece of chipboard in the back. That's all I'm looking. Okay, we are very close to the edge. Just to make sure that I'm making my turn. I'm going to do it by hand. Again, I'm going to leave the foot in my cardstock. Not the foot, the needle in my cardstock, lifting up the foot. Turn the cardstock around, and it feels like it's as you can see, it doesn't really want to go straight here, right? So then I'm going to put it back in, And even lift your, if you want, you can lift your needle up. No, leave your, it's better to put your needle in. Okay, turn around, and the same thing happens. When this happens is because of the stitch might be too wide. So maybe if I was gonna go, it also depends on the length of the cardstock, because if you really want to do everything perfectly, you actually need to measure the width of your stitch every time, and measure the width of your cardstock. So you're not never gonna have perfection when you turn around the corners. So that's the reason why when this happens, you once you turn the cardstock around, making sure that you're not moving the cardstock up or down. Now you can remove the needle out of the cardstock, and all you have to do is just come with the cardstock close to your chipboard. And now lower in the foot again and start sewing. And we are done. And there you go. If you want to go more, I don't know how the style is called. You can even leave these pieces hanging and trim them shorter. Or if you want, you can just go in and trim them perfectly. But there you go. We have a nice straight edge of sewing, all with the help of these chipboard pieces. Um, and I guess this is it. I hope you enjoy the video, and I hope you find it helpful, and I wish you the best of luck. But believe me, you need a little bit of patience. Remember that you are the master of the machine and not the other way around, so don't let the machine intimidate you. Take your time. If you need to use your hand a little bit until you get used to the motion, on the wheel, that's fine too. Nothing will break your machine. Thank you for watching, and have a good one. Bye bye.